online forum for 2020-2021. Our topic for today is investment in the age of COVID-19.
In place that you can get a whole bunch of leverage on every equity dollar. I would just really strongly caution
Somebody go on mute. That would be great.
The business and changing product direction or changing engineering effort towards searching for the brands versus North Star should be fun.
I think admin can
as well. Market strategy that we can scale.
I think we're good. Awesome. Nothing like a nice little online Zoom meeting with some technical difficulties or a little bit of background audio. Perfect. So the topic for today is investment in the age of COVID-19, and more specifically, how to raise money in a pandemic. So before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for joining us online today. And thank you for those who joined earlier for the virtual networking at the beginning of the event. Let me just make an adjustment here. I lost it. 1 second. Whoa. Of course, nothing like some technical difficulties. 1 moment. Okay, we should be good now. Okay. Perfect. All right. Let me know if you guys are good. Can you see the screen here? Awesome. So again, thank you everybody for joining. What I'd like to do, thank you again for joining the earlier session. As I mentioned, well, here we are. So just to give you a little bit of idea of who VEF is, the Vancouver Entrepreneurs Forum started back in 1988. It is the premier networking forum for technology entrepreneurs in Vancouver. So that was basically 32 years ago, if you can believe that. VEF has been bringing together entrepreneurs and investors alike to cultivate a meaningful connection and create opportunities for everybody. I see that you guys can see my notes, which is a little bit awkward. Let's see how we can do that. There we go. Perfect. So thanks again. So if you guys haven't joined the Slack channel, I suggest you highly do so. It'll allow you guys to still be connected with everybody after the event as well. It'll also be posted in the group Slack in the Zoom, actually. So first off, I'd like to thank the boards. We have a very diverse set of board members here. And you know, this event couldn't have been made possible without everybody coming together to do something like this. You know, our AGM is coming up soon, so I'd love for everybody to provide some feedback for us to be able to improve and provide more value to those who are attending. And more importantly, I'd like to kick off and thank our sponsors, our title sponsor being Innovate BC. Innovate BC has been around for quite a bit, a long time, and has been helping a lot of entrepreneurs and startups in Vancouver. More importantly, our other VEF sponsors from CIBC, Colliers, Corporate Recruiters, Douglas College, Fasken, Wealth Bar, and Voyager Capital. Thank you all for participating and being part of VEF. It's organizations like yourselves that allow VEF to continue as a nonprofit and be able to provide value to the ecosystem for 32 years. And more importantly, the platform and the opportunity that has allowed us to share this content with you and our delivery partner is New Ventures BC. I highly recommend everybody to go on to New Ventures BC to take a look and see you know, what kind of resources they can pull together and you know, help you kind of build your business in these challenging times. So a few community announcements. What I'd like to do is take 100 seconds each to allow a few groups to provide a few community announcements, and we'll start off with Sfu Venture Labs initially to give a few announcements.
Great. It's Dave Thomas. I'm going to share my screen. If you could unshare yours, then I'll be able to share mine, please. Great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're here today to make a public service announcement to the community. Is about a number of different programs that Venture Labs is running. Some programs, some webinars. We have market validation training for really early stage companies. I know that 2 of the companies that are on this session right now are actually registered to participate. This is a joint venture with New Ventures BC. Market validation starts next Monday. We also have a series of free webinars that anybody can participate in. One on legal documents, the first of 3, starts next Wednesday. And finally, the Vantech Angel Network is also next week as well. For market validation training, there are 3 webinars, Mondays, October 5th, 19th, and November 2nd. Every company is assigned a mentor, and there'll be mentor feedback between sessions, as well as there'll be a review session afterwards. And so what's covered? It's helping companies with goal setting, value proposition. Will be a whole section on customer discovery and rediscovery. And then we'll take a look at how do you target specific markets and understand how digital marketing is more and more important in the world of COVID. Finally, we'll close off with an introduction to Proformas. And one of the things that's important is that there are specific deliverables. Each company will have a detailed business model canvas. This is one of the key things that NRC IRAP looks for in new companies. Also, we'll have key milestones, goals, and objectives for the next 6 months, and a timeline, as well as customer comments, feedback, and personas for potential customers from the customer discovery that they do. So my name is Dave Thomas. I'm with Venture Labs. If anybody's interested, you can apply on our website, or if you're an advisor or mentor, you can certainly refer companies to participate in the program put on by Venture Labs and New Ventures BC. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dave. Next, we have Annika from League of Innovators.
Hi, folks. Thanks for listening to me for the next 100 seconds. I'm Annika. My pronouns are she, them. I'm calling in today from the ancestral unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. The League of Innovators is the national Canadian charity that supports young entrepreneurs all the way from discovery to acceleration through a suite of accessible programming. At the core of what we do is we're focused on the future of work that requires an entrepreneurial skill set, whether that means you're becoming a founder, an entrepreneur, or building your entrepreneurial skill set mindset with a social purpose. For us, youth are folks who are age 15 to 25. Specifically, as the Labs director, Labs is a national virtual accelerator program for youth-led startups. What makes our program different is that there are no fees, no equity, and no strings attached associated with this program. So throughout the 12 weeks, you get access to live workshops, Ask Me Anything sessions with serial entrepreneurs and investors, best-in-class resources, coaching and mentorship, with the goal to build your network and toolkit. We work with youth-led startups of all different kinds of business models, from B2B SaaS, products, services, emerging nonprofits, everything in between, a blend, in all kinds of different industries from coast to coast across Canada. The applications for our 6th cohort of labs starting February 2021 is opening later this week until December 1st. These are some of the youth in action, some clippings and PR pieces from the Labs community in the last few months. Labs has an alumni community of over 300 young entrepreneurs that's continuing to grow. This cohort that's happening right now has 70 entrepreneurs in it. And with that being said, I'd love to get connected. The social channels for the League of Innovators are here on the left, and my contact information here is on the right, and I'll post it again in the chat.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Annika. Next, we have Colin Weston from Startup Vancouver. Colin, you're on mute. Colin. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
All right. Am I still on mute? I just unmuted myself.
You're good.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces here because what we do here with Startup Vancouver, and just like the sign says behind me here, as far as connecting entrepreneurs and innovators and founders and early growth companies. And to start off with Startup Vancouver there, you can see we are most active on social media. That's where we have all of our own events, all the events that we promote and support and co-present across the city, across the province, and across the nation, especially now that we're virtual. We've taken all the great things we've done over the last 3 years, and myself as the community leader here with Startup Vancouver, from in-venue. Remember those days when we used to get together in an actual space, less than 6 feet apart? Well, we're not doing that, but we've managed to recalibrate, like all startups and entrepreneurs have to do, to reimagine ourselves. And we've come up with 2 event series that we have here. So with that, going too fast here. And the other place you can find us, both on LinkedIn and also now with our freshly minted YouTube channel, where we have all of our recent episodes of our weekly live stream show called What Keeps You Up at Night? Entrepreneurship during challenging times. We just had one again today. Actually, Annika, and her smiling face there, we had her on as a guest. And I know that Paul's going to be a guest on in the next couple of weeks, representing VEF. And that is really our why and our purpose. That whole connection piece is the fact that entrepreneurship is difficult, it's hard, it's isolating, but we're here to provide the resources, the tools, and the connectivity to each other, especially both here locally, provincially, and nationally, as I mentioned, through the power of Startup Canada, which we are one of 40 community chapters that represents the 3.5 million entrepreneurs across the country. As I mentioned, that was today's show here. We roll them out every single week. And we also make sure we keep these a little bit light and energetic, because these are such heavy times. Yes, they're inspirational and educational, but we keep them fun also with that. And I see, going too fast again here. The other thing I wanted to mention too, we've done these in venue for over a year with our partners at Sfu Venture Labs. And we've also partnered with League of Innovators in the past. So we have our speaker series monthly now called Can Startup Stories. So now we have a national audience. The next one coming up is going to be on October 21st, which is celebrating clean tech entrepreneurs that we're collaborating with Foresight. Then after that, we're going to be rolling out celebrating young entrepreneurs, celebrating LGBTQ entrepreneurs, and on it goes. So we're going to be doing many more of these, and we'd love to get you involved here within our community and have some of you actually represent and be part of the conversation with that. So once again, there's how to connect with us. I'll put my information, like Annika said she's going to do, in chat, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colin. So for our next event, I want everybody to put on their thinking and listening caps. We have, as part of our general cohort kind of presentation, we'd like to kick off some lightning pitches for entrepreneurs, which are leading some early stage companies and very high potential innovators. So what we'd like to do is another 100-sec promote of their venture, their funding initiative or collaboration goals. And first up, we have Farhan from Sayri. Farhan, you're up.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right, so thank you for having us. We are Sare Music. The problem is the entertainment needs of people who love Indian classical music are significantly underserved. This is a 42 million and growing global market of people who love the genre but do not have easy access to it. Enter Sare Music, a music app dedicated for Indian classical music, available worldwide with exclusive content not available anywhere else. And the reason it's not available anywhere else is because we hold worldwide exclusive rights to 85 to 90% of all recordings from Pakistan. We have a simple auto-recurring subscriptions-based business model where users can choose between monthly, half-yearly, and yearly plans. I'm very lucky that Sare Music has and continues to build a strong team with deep industry knowledge and complementary skill sets. My name is Farhan. I have 16 years of experience in the genre. Devon is a serial entrepreneur from Vancouver. Nick was a subscription manager at Spotify, and Jim formerly worked in Apple Music and iTunes. We have strong performance metrics where revenues have grown 13x since we've launched, on track to product market fit, where our monthly recurring revenues have spiked in the last 3 months on the back of a repeatable customer acquisition formula at all stages of the funnel. And your investment is the rocket fuel we need for takeoff, invested in content, marketing, tech, and operations, with exciting exit possibilities, including to Spotify. And by 2025, we will have 2 million subscribers and be a $300 million company. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions and hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Farhan. I know I personally love a little bit of Indian music here and there. So I also want to let you guys know to keep checking the chats down here. A lot of activity happening, and you can reference back. So I think next up we have Dan Zollman from Case.
Hey folks, just checking my audio. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you are good.
All right, so I'm Dan Zollman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Case. Over half of Canadians will face at least one legal issue, but most never talk to a lawyer. Yet lawyers on average bill fewer than 2.5 hours a day, spending the rest of their time on administration and on finding new clients. So we created Case. Case is a SaaS-enabled managed marketplace that helps people find and work with lawyers entirely online using its purpose-built proprietary platform. Clients pay lawyers as they go for legal services. Lawyers pay Case for every hour billed through the platform. Now, competitors like LegalZoom and Avo generate leads, but then move transactions offline. With fully online delivery, Case captures all revenue and data in the marketplace. A central part of our distribution strategy is letting nonprofit access to justice organizations use Case for free. In exchange, they onboard lawyers and encourage them to practice in Case. Our SaaS platform is now fully operational. Case BC is live with 25 partners or 25 lawyers. Our partnerships in BC and California are live as well. And breaking news, in September, we received $150,000 in funding from the BC provincial government to help divert family law matters out of the court system. Our founding team worked together across North America for years, driving the adoption of telemedicine and teleeducation, and are now bringing that expertise to online delivery of law. As founders, we've invested $1.4 million in Case to date. We're now raising $750K and hope you invest alongside us as we build a high volume, high margin business. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dan, and congratulations on the new financing. I know legal tech has definitely been growing significantly over the last few years, so I would definitely keep an eye on that for you guys. So next up, we have Sean from 152 Tech Solutions. Sean.
Hello. Hello. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay. Are you guys able to see my full screen?
You're good.
Okay. So my name is Sean. I'm a co-founder and CEO of 152 Tech. Our flagship product is MOS, and what MOS essentially is merchant operating system for the new age, in where retailers are definitely trying to mobilize more. So the reason why we started solving this problem is because we recognize that the point of sale technology is a little bit outdated, and currently to bring this current standards into the retail infrastructure, they still require a lot of costly integrations, minimum 3 to 5 usually, and they all have their external service plugins as well, which for the cannabis space has proven to be pretty problematic with their inventory and SKU systems. So what we realize retailers require in 2020, especially after COVID, is to mobilize the retail storefront more than ever, and a tool to monitor all of that performance from sale to consumption, essentially. And so in that same conversation, the tech industry has been in a bit of a land grab. So this MOS technology itself is very scalable through other industry offerings, and also available to scale globally in other regions. With our development, we take a very analytical approach to everything, all of our development sprints. And so with that and listening and having that multi-local approach to our development in our industries, it allows us to actually focus more on their feedback rather than listening to troubleshooting calls that are stemmed from a multinational approach with development. What that means is sometimes you'll have a cannabis store grandfather a system in from the liquor industry or the QSR industry, which generally will offer them compliance issues in operating their retail store. This happens parallelly in liquor as well as other general store convenience areas where tobacco is sold and liquor is sold in the States and things of that nature. So we've launched this MOS model in cannabis and general retail, and here are some of the next industries we plan to scale into. Essentially, MOS is just the POS reimagined. When POS software came into the industry, it was about 1970, and it hasn't really been rethought since, around mobile integration, around external reach for customer retention. So we've essentially amalgamated everything and offset our development costs and offering those savings forward to the retailer, and also the ease of mind, essentially, because when there's a service issue, they have to call all sorts of different places. Everything is no third party. Everything is natively built.
You have 10 seconds.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm gonna just rush over to what we charge. This is kind of our growth pricing here. This is just based on grabbing a footprint, and then in stage 2, we plan to engage in being an ISO, kind of like Square has already done so. We're raising currently to list on the TSXV, and we have a current bottleneck that is about 1.8 million in service orders ready to be executed. So here we have a 5-step plan to achieve that. How many seconds do we have? We're pretty much over, right?
You're at limit. You're at limit.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. I hope to connect with you guys more, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to be amongst you peers as well.
Thank you, Sean. Very much appreciated. I just wanted to give some clarity to everybody as well that this tree behind me is not a cannabis tree. It is a money tree. If you guys were wondering, we are good for that. So thank you, Dan, Farhan, and Sean, for your presentations. I want to remind everybody and our guests today to keep the conversations going on our social media here. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Be sure to tag us, hashtag us, do it all up and down. But for, no longer ado, I'm sure you guys are tired of seeing my face, so I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, who's much better looking than I am, which is Nick Findler from Purple Fin Ventures. Nick, do you want to give a few kind of overview of yourself and maybe a little brief introduction?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Nick. I've been an early stage investor, founder, and consultant for startups and public companies for the last number of years. And just really excited to be here and help facilitate a great conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick. So I'd like to introduce our panelists here. We have Alex Norman, who is the Canadian partner from AngeList. Alex is quite active within the Canadian ecosystem. He also invests directly through his own fund, N45P. Second, we have Meredith Powell. Meredith actually has sat on Microsoft board and is quite active. She's part of Voyager Capital, 600 million assets under management. They're a very unique fund based in the States, but investing in Canadian-based companies. So very happy to have her on board. Third, we have Kathleen. Kathleen is part of Vistara Capital. She did a long stint in New York, has been involved on the operational side with a number of different early stage companies in New York. And more importantly, they're a very unique fund, as they are not only able to invest along the equity side, but also able to provide debt capital and non-dilutive capital on that end. Fourth, we have Terell, who unfortunately had a emergency and was unable to attend, but Terell was a past partner at Andreessen Horowitz. He left to start his own nonprofit, Paladin, to actually help startups with connections, with product development, fundraising, basically all the things required for a startup to be successful. So with that, I will leave it to the panel Q&A. If you guys have any questions, please leave it in the Zoom chat, and I will pass this off to Nick to take it off and go into the panel questions.
Amazing. Well, I guess first, before we get started, it might be nice to hear from the three panelists just to give us sort of a more personal overview of themselves. So maybe we'll start with Meredith, and then Alex, and then on to Kathleen.
All right, you just want to know a little bit more about the work that we do?
Yeah.
Sure. So like described in my intro, I'm with Voyager Capital. So Voyager Capital is a 20-year-old Seattle-based fund. We invest across Cascadia specifically. So that's Oregon, Washington, BC, and Alberta, or what we like to call Western Canada. And we're focused on seed to Series A rounds, and that's specifically B2B tech. So we're only doing enterprise software deals.
Okay, amazing. And Alex?
So my main mission in life is to grow the Canadian tech ecosystem. So I do that 3 ways. One is we brought AngeList to Canada. It's a venture platform which helps funds and companies raise money for the current round or the current fund. I have my own pre-seed fund which invests across Canada in software companies called N49P. And I launched an organization called TechTO, which is poorly named because we're across the country as well, which helps founders meet each other and learn from each other and grow their businesses.
Amazing. And on to Kathleen.
Hey guys, it's nice to meet everyone. My name's Kathleen. As mentioned, I'm on the investment team here at Vistara Capital. We invest exclusively in enterprise software businesses in the technology space and tech-enabled services across North America. Roughly 50% of our portfolio is in the States and 50% is in Canada. And as mentioned, we have the unique ability to invest across the capital structure, so both debt and equity. Typically, our fund is doing debt investments into technology companies.
Okay, great. So I guess, one of the main reasons that, we're all here is obviously the landscape in funding and VC has shifted dramatically over the last 6 months and has obviously probably left a lot of founders, a little bit confused or wondering, what's happening in the overall space. So, what I was hoping to hear from the panelists was, what is your experience in interacting with these founders? How are you meeting them that may be different from before? Yeah, maybe if you could just talk a little bit about that experience. Anyone want to tackle that?
I'll jump in here. So I think there's been 2 adjustment periods since March. The first March through the first quarter of COVID was really a period where there's no activity, new funding, except follow-on funding to portfolio companies. So if anyone, very few people were looking for funding other than going back to their current investors. And I think most investors at that time were looking at their portfolios, helping them, the founders adjust their plans, and then giving capital to companies that needed more capital and deserved more capital. I think since that period, I've never seen a more busy period of founders looking for capital. So usually I'd say, let's say on an average week before, my deal volume would be 10 inbound inquiries. I'm seeing about 10 a day right now. And what's happened is I'm seeing a lot of founders who've had previous exits or experienced personnel saying this is a time to start a new company. They're all going out to raise. And so it creates a challenge because, before I could meet everyone at the coffee shop, I could meet them in person, but everyone now wants to meet via Zoom. So people have the time to meet, but I think the bar to raise capital and the bar is significantly harder than it was before. But if you can raise capital, you can raise at better terms. So I think what you're seeing across Canada is fewer deals being done at the pre-seed or seed rounds, but they're actually getting more capital, a higher valuation than they were getting in February. And the question for founders, how do you make those connections and how do you meet the people that are writing checks? And so it's I think a smart cold email or outreach will work now when it wouldn't work in the past. But a smart email is not just blasting 1,000 angels or VCs you found on the internet. It's looking and finding people that are investing in your thesis, taking the time to craft an email saying, hey, so-and-so, I'm reaching out to you because I've seen you have a thesis or you've invested in these similar companies before. I have a unique insight or I have this traction. I'd like to get 20 minutes of your time. So I think rounds are getting done together. They're harder barred. There's more competition, but you can now meet people. And like, you know, before I'd be running around Toronto or Vancouver. I was in Vancouver for the day, and I'd meet maybe 5, 6 people. Now I can meet hypothetically 10, 15 people because I don't like leave the seat all day. So that's a really high level of what the changes have been.
Interesting, just to add to what Alex was saying, we've seen a lot of similar patterns. I mean, March was very quiet, April was very quiet, May started heating up, and now we're flooded with deal flow. So, you know, I would say that's probably a common experience. And certainly we're seeing a lot of movement like in e-com and, you know, all the kind of hot spaces. We're not a big healthcare investor, but we're seeing a lot of interesting stuff in the healthcare space. Anything tied to remote learning or ed tech, like these are all areas where we're seeing huge growth. So, you know, founders who were maybe considering a raise are now seeing that this might be a hot opportunity. I mean, on the flip side, we've also seen some interesting pivots, companies that were working in spaces that obviously got hit very hard, perhaps in ticketing or, you know, different areas that won't be changing anytime soon with COVID. I think the other thing that's been really interesting for us is, you know, we're talking a lot about the pandemic here, but certainly for us, we have an office in Portland, one in Seattle, one in Vancouver. We also spent a lot of time thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement and thinking about anti-racism and how that relates to our companies. So one of the things we've started to notice is a lot of the founders that are coming to us are showing more diverse boards. That's advisory boards and board of directors. That's really exciting for us. We've also been really hands-on with a few different groups like Female Founders Alliance or, you know, different groups that were supporting diverse founders. And they've been flooded with new entrants into the sort of entrepreneurial space. So that gets us very excited. And I think that's just going to be something, we'll never go back to how we were before this time. This is a permanent change and we look forward to being a part of that change as well.
Yeah, I would just add, I agree with kind of Alex and Meredith's points where initially we were seeing, you know, lots of capital being done to invest in companies who are looking to steady the ship, but now they've kind of removed their employees remote. Everyone has been stabilized. You know, companies are being much more opportunistic in terms of investing for growth or being opportunistic to take advantage of certain kind of opportunities that have presented themselves in the space. I think from an investor perspective, you know, I think our mentality in this environment has been kind of proof over promise. So for example, yes, your pipeline is very strong right now, but have you actually been able to close deals in this environment? And really looking for, you know, traction, whether it's retention or signing up new deals. Maybe one thing I would just add on in terms of the debt market, we've been quite busy actually, probably even earlier in the year. In Q2, we actually closed 4 new investments and really have seen heightened activity in that space as companies look to either delay or complement their equity raises. We've seen kind of 2 uses of capital. One, companies are either looking to shore up their balance sheet to ride out the uncertainty, or companies are trying to take advantage of unique growth opportunities and really put their foot to the gas and plant new flags potentially. I think in both of those scenarios, we've seen companies who are looking to do this without potentially pricing equity and maybe increasing runway to do that at a later stage. We've also seen been particularly busy on the debt front for companies who may be facing you know, the prospect of a down round and wanting to avoid the dilution associated with that. Really looking to extend runway through debt capital. So I'd say our firm in particular, you know, Q2 was our busiest quarter in our fund's history. So have seen a lot of activity on the debt side as well.
So can I just follow up on what Kathleen just said? I think a very important thing she said about is the proof. And I think there's 2 ways I'm seeing that is either proof in actual traction revenues. And I'm also seeing lots of value being put on founders that have done it before, teams that have done it before. And so I've seen 2 recent financings in Toronto with teams that had, let's say, you know, 90 to 100 million exits before, pre-product, the team's back together again. They're raising $4 to $5 million in a week on like a 15 to 20 pre, and that wasn't happening before. So just any way you can build proof to show that you have a credible team, credible revenue, there's a lot more value being put on that than there was 6 months ago.
Yeah, I guess that kind of piggybacks into the next question that I had. So maybe that there's, you know, anything else that you wanted to add on it was, you know, how are you measuring, you know, the founders' abilities during the pandemic? Is there anything else that anyone to add? Maybe Meredith?
I mean, it's an interesting question because I don't know that I would say that fundamentally we're assessing deals so differently than we did before. A good investment is a good investment. A great founder is a great founder. We do have a lot of founders, sort of to Alex's point, that come to us out of Amazon, Microsoft, Expedia, like just by dint of being in a particular neighborhood regionally. So we do see a lot of experienced founders. But by the same token, you know, we did 7 seed deals in the last few months, and we did a few follow-ons, and they were not all experienced founders. We had some, you know, some earlier sort of first-time founders who came through with, you know, incredible pitches, just caught our eye. We never met the team in person. We did the deal entirely virtually. So I would say we're still broadly sort of doing the business in the same way. We conduct DD the same way. We're using the same investment process and voting internally as well.
Yeah, I guess it leads really well to my next question as well, was around the percentage of deals that, you know, were being done by your groups virtually pre-COVID. You know, I would assume that most of the deals are happening virtually now. How has that shift been, and how do you see that looking, you know, 12 months, 36 months, maybe even 10 years from now? Do you see a actual structural change in the way that deals are being done, where you don't have to shake the founder's hand? Would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would echo Meredith's sentiment that, you know, we've largely are looking for the same business fundamentals. Our process has been unchanged. Obviously, all of our diligence has been conducted virtually. I think maybe what's been different is we've spent, you know, maybe more time with management as opposed to spending a few days on site. You know, we've had a number of conversations longer over different formats. Also have engaged maybe a few more teams than in past and gone a few layers deeper. So touching a broader part of the organization to get a sense of how they're working together. Also have done a few more customer calls, not only on the, I'd say on the product diligence side, but again, understanding the customer's experience, working with the founders, working with the management team. Similarly, have also, when we're going into a deal, spoken to the other investors in the cap table and understand their experiences as well. I think looking forward, you know, this is a relationship business. So much comes from informal meetings, you know, grabbing a coffee at a conference or a dinner. So when I think you're entering a long-term relationship with someone, adding them to your cap table, you know, you're building trust, and that happens repeatedly over time through a number of interactions, both formal and informal. And so I do think that maybe some original pitching will be done remotely to maybe save on travel. I do think, you know, building long-term relationships, even post-close and board meetings and things like that, will rebound and continue to happen in person.
So I have a slightly different perspective. I don't think the qualifications overall, what I'm looking for investment, has changed, but I think there's 2 things that you miss by not meeting people in person. One is the random collisions. You know, being at an event, you just run into someone, you talk to them, and you start building a relationship, then you go invest in them 6 months later. That it's very hard online. You do have some networking online, but it's still different. And I think there's some lack of fidelity when you can't meet a team in person. You can't see how the co-founders react to each other. You can't see team dynamics. So I think how I've started making up for that is I think there's a lot more diligence calls on people I don't have as a long-term relationship with and I don't know as well. So I think decisions aren't made as fast just because you have to do more of this check on the soft skills as due diligence. How do these founders know each other? How well do you think they'll be able to recruit? I think there's a more of an emphasis on teams being able to tell a story and to sell, because before, if you had really technical founders that maybe, you know, they could go out and go to Ruby on Rails night and recruit people by just getting them excited. Now I think the war for talent's still there, and the ability to tell a story and to recruit. And if you don't have a big network from before because you weren't on Amazon, I think that's more important than before. So I think that's a slight change. And I think, yeah, online, you know, I've done deals virtually before. It was a small percentage. Now last 5-6 months, I don't think I've met many teams in person. I think going forward, though, I think when things return to normal, whatever that new normal is, I still have a preference for meeting teams in person, walking the floor, seeing how they treat the teams, because I do put a lot of emphasis on soft skills, which don't come out with on a conversation here, right? Like, yeah, you can pick up stuff about team dynamics and just by walking the floor with founders.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I miss it so much. Like I'm not in VC just because I like crunching numbers all day, right? Like I love people. I love entrepreneurs. I like getting out there in the mix. So like this has been hard. I think our whole team, for the first couple of months, we were sort of like, okay, we were digging in with our portfolio and doing all this stuff, reforecasting. And then we're like, man, like, are we going to be virtual for 6 more months or 8 more months? And even these kinds of events, like we get a little taste of a connection, which is nice. But I really look forward to being able to get back to, attending conferences and having dinners, and, we're doing the best we can. I think it's really hard on founders too. When I see founders pitching us, they come into this virtual room. Sometimes there's a disconnect. The sound is a little bit off. They're trying to read the room. It's not the same as coming into a boardroom and pitching a partnership team for a vote, or being able to sit in person and share a coffee and really talk through some of the challenges you're having in your business. Like doing it all remote, I think it's hard for us as investors, but I think it's really hard for entrepreneurs too. So in all of your opinion, what will it take to go back to meeting founders on the floor per se and having those coffees? Like for you, is it, vaccine being widely spread, or what do you think happens over the next 6 to 12 months that maybe shifts that back to somewhat of a more regular scene for those meetings?
So,
yeah, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, I maybe politically correct, but I've actually started meeting founders in a socially distanced way again. So like I'm a venture partner at a incubator accelerator, I don't know how you call it, Entrepreneurship First, which launched their first cohort. So they have socially distanced meetings today. So I actually went and attended. I think I don't know, I think it'll happen sooner than later, but then again, I feel like we're about to head back to a lockdown in Toronto. So it's more when's it okay? Like I figure my kids are at school right now, so if I do socially distance meetings, it's fine. But if it gets worse again, I think we'll be back to doing everything virtually. Because I just do believe that it's just, especially if it's someone you don't have a long-term relationship with, it's much harder to invest off a virtual meeting.
Kathleen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
So I would say the same. I think everyone is really craving that personal connection. And so I think folks are thinking the sooner the better. But obviously, the border and kind of quarantine restrictions and things like that are all dependent and, play a big part in travel. And I think teams are also being very cautious, not, infecting, having a visitor infect their entire team and maybe decrease productivity and things like that. So I think it depends, there's definitely a mutual give and take, what you as an investor are comfortable with and what the company and what the company is comfortable with for themselves and for the team. But no, I think we're seeing people are pretty keen to get back to that person-to-person interaction, but only once it's safe, obviously.
Great. I've got a question for Meredith. Obviously, we've got a big election upcoming down in the US. How do you think this is going to affect Canadian founders?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a lot of unknowns right now, that's for sure. I mean, I would say like over the summer, we did see some founders, like some BC founders who were saying, okay, we're thinking we're going to go out, like open up a seed or a Series A in like October, November. And we were kind of coaching them saying, whoa, hang on a second. You remember that we're in a bit of a BC bubble here. And our BC tech and related investment is heavily reliant on access to US venture capital. And then we in turn are beholden to our LPs. So, there is a fear, I would say certainly in my circle, that with a potential change, the US election, if there were a Democratic win, could there be a market crash? Like that's a sort of concern that people have talked about based on historicals, sort of less of a political statement at all, but just something we've seen before and could be something that would affect certainly the US. And not only would that affect potentially some of our LPs, in our fund, but certainly anybody going out to fundraise during that stretch. So we're just trying to warn everyone, in BC to be cognizant of that time period and know that there could be a lot of sort of upheaval and distraction, I suppose. And then I think, something that's interesting for founders to think about as they're, thinking about fundraising is as they meet with funds, how far along is that fund in terms of, when did they close and how much of their fund have they deployed? And that's just something maybe to think about strategically, if we did come to a place where it was challenging, for example, to find LPs or to close a new fund, So some of those investors might be in a bit of a tough spot. Like Voyager, we closed in Q4 of 2019. So it was like 130 million. We've only deployed 20%. So we have a lot available. We have a lot of dry powder available. So we're a good like potential lead. We follow on that has some flexibility. So I think if I'm a founder, I'm also thinking about that a little bit, even more strategically right now, just knowing there could be some uncertainty in the market, and obviously with a re-up with the pandemic as well.
I think that's a great, a really excellent point. I think, you know, just to echo that, I think when you're raising capital, do your diligence to understand the dynamics on the other side of the table. And I think, you know, funds themselves also, as Meredith pointed out, are thinking about fundraising and face the same level of uncertainty with their own investor bases. And so I think understanding, you know, who has capital over, you know, who has the longevity is also important as you think strategically about partners you want to engage.
I just like to add one more point here. There is one upside for founders in Canada is I've seen such a reverse brain drain accelerate every month. And so like I got on the phone this week with high level engineers from Dropbox, Airbnb, and what's the other, another high profile company, all returning home. So there is an ability to grab, again, hypothetically talent could be remote, but if you want to build a local team, there's a lot of people deciding that they no longer want to be in the States because of the current political situation, the current handling of COVID. So if founders can now actually, if they have the capital and they have the foresight, they can build a team with more bench strength than they could before, and they can entice people back to either Vancouver, Toronto, or anywhere in Canada.
Great. Alex, actually had a question for you. Meredith mentioned that it's really important to understand, how much dry powder, a VC fund has. Something I know you're involved in AngeList, so I wanted to get your thoughts on sort of the rollout of rolling funds and, how you think that will, impact the landscape and what you're seeing thus far.
So,
and maybe for those who don't know what a rolling fund is, if you could maybe briefly explain it.
So rolling funds is a new fund structure that AngeList rolled out about 4 or 5 months ago. And the idea there is the GP can publicly solicit that they're raising a fund, and that basically they have a close of the fund every quarter, and LPs can commit for whatever the number of quarters, the minimum amount per quarter that the GP selects. From what I can see is the amount of emerging managers or potential managers that have been attracted to this offering is immense. We actually have a lineup out the door for managers that want to launch rolling funds and what you're seeing, and these are what I'd say traditionally operating angels with a bit of following either on some social media channel or are offline that can basically convert their following into LPs. And I think what you're going to see, it will turbocharge the pre-seed and seed landscape, particularly in the Valley. I see demand for it from Canadian emerging managers, and I think we'll have 5 or 10 in the pipeline that will probably go live in the next 2 quarters. I think also lots of those emerging managers are investing, North American wide. So I know I know Zach Coullis has just launched a rolling fund. He actually has a 60 million fund on the side. Now he's rolling a rolling fund, but I know he's actively investing in Canada. So I think you're going to see there's a whole new batch of emerging managers that will be looking to invest across North America based upon their thesis, and they're much more transparent. They're much more social by nature than traditional managers, for better or worse. What will that do? Well, how much additional capital I'll put into the ecosystem, I'm not sure at this point. And I think what the good thing is you can see how much they're raising money to deploy in the quarter, which good for good or bad. So you can see how much usually most of these guys and girls are public with how much they've raised. So you can see how many deals they're looking to invest in. So how it will play out, I'm not exactly sure.
Great, thanks for that. Kathleen, I was hoping to get your opinion on what you're seeing in sort of the landscape of valuations and how it's affecting the desire for debt financing. Maybe if I could get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the market is really a bifurcation. There are certain industries that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, travel, things like that. And then there are industries that have had really strong tailwinds, healthcare, e-commerce, cloud, things like that. And valuations are really frothy. I think, investors have a lot of capital to deploy still and are willing to pay a premium for those premium assets. And so what we're seeing is really I would say almost a barbell type market where there are people who have taken pretty big hits to valuation and those that are really seeing a boon just given certain multiples that are now being placed on industries and companies. So for us, potentially for companies that are trying to delay a raise or hoping for a market turnaround, waiting to remove some of that uncertainty to maybe increase their valuation, debt can be a really effective tool to do that, and spend some time continuing to build their product, increase their customer base, and then go to price the equity to get some of that credit in the valuation once the uncertainty has passed. So for those companies in particular, I think debt can be very effective, and we're seeing definitely an increase from that perspective.
Meredith, I've got the next question for you here. What would be your advice, and seeing as there's a lot of founders in the participant group watching this right now, what would be your advice to them for building relationships with VCs, prior to them needing funding? What are some of the best practices? What would be your advice for them?
Yeah, well, certainly, a warm intro is always a great call, but this is a little bit of a different time. And, we can't just bump into somebody at a conference, and sometimes a warm intro is challenging. So I would say I'm seeing a lot more, LinkedIn in-mails, and honestly, if it's well-crafted, it's welcome. I would say to bear in mind, like Alex was mentioning earlier, if you get 10 deals in a week, now maybe he's getting 10 a day. He's not alone in that. Many of us have very, very full inboxes, DMs, in-mails. So, if you can stay very, very clear and concise, what is your ask? What are you working on? What are are you actively raising? Are you thinking about raising? Are you in revenue? Like the simplest, clearest bullets are very, very helpful in being able to sort of make our way through what is become sort of a flood of inbound for the most part. Like I don't really have to do any outbound per se. And then, there's a lot of deal sharing too. Obviously, we like to lead rounds, so we'll often syndicate around ourselves, but we often have a lot of colleagues who bring in. This is very much like a word of mouth game. So, if you are actively fundraising, like follow VCs on Twitter, interact with them there, follow them, like just get as social as you can so that you're connected in as many ways as possible. And then sort of some classic, like if you want to stay in touch, like if you have a quarterly newsletter, that's always great. I appreciate a request to be added to a quarterly newsletters. I'm usually happy to do that. If it's a deal I'm following more closely, we might do a quarterly phone call for a check-in if there's like an impending raise. Those are some pretty classic ways that we can stay easily in touch. I'm in the know, and I'm kind of on the list of people to keep advised.
Great. Alex, I got the next question for you here. With first-time founders looking to raise their first round, we were chatting yesterday, or you mentioned yesterday that you see a lot of founders getting bad advice. What is that bad advice you think, and sort of what is the best advice for these founders kind of getting rolling with their first financings? So,
and I think, God, there's so much. I think the biggest one is around how much they're raising and what the ask is. And so it seems like, at least in Toronto, and I haven't seen as much deals recently in Vancouver, but in Toronto, there's always like, I'm looking for $750 to $1 million. And then I'm using this 40% in marketing and 60% in engineering. And I think the ask is completely wrong, because the ask should be made on what you need to hit a milestone or de-risk your business. Some thought out. So if it's 500,000 or $1 million or $1.5 million, the amount of dilution you'll get from a first time raise will be relatively dissimilar. So if you can have a well thought out why you're asking for much and how that makes your company difference, that's much stronger than that just basically coming out with a standard $750 to $1 million, which I see in many pitches. I think the other thing is lots of founders, first-time founders, seem to be running their processes in serial instead of parallel. So they're having conversations with me, and then they go talk to another VC fund, and they go talk to someone else. And for whatever reasons, none of us have said yes, or none of us, probably we said no. But the process, if they start stringing that out, the deal starts looking bad, and then there's more people who can go ask why they passed, because every VCs are optimists by trade, and we want to invest, but we see so much deal flow, it's an easy to say no. And then once it gets out that, hey, you've talked to, I don't know, Panache, Yaletown, and someone else, because we will know, like, we do share information that it actually will kill the momentum in your deal. So I think the key thing is do your research, know who you want to reach out, reach the 10 or 20 people in parallel, try to run a tight ship where you're trying to have those conversations with a fixed amount so that you can push everyone else out and create a bit of FOMO and create momentum, because once you've done this stuff in serial and the first or two people have said no or haven't made a decision, it's going to get out there and it's going to hurt your chance of even raising it. And even if, and the worst is you reach out to me and it's outside my thesis, like let's say it's hard, it's deep tech hardware that's going to take 3 years to prove that the technology is right. That's just, I'm not going to invest in that. But the fact you reached out to me, you spent, people will find out, and you may just lose momentum for all the wrong reasons. So do the research beforehand, have the right ask for amount, which is logical, not just because that's what people told you the market will do, and be prepared. I think just first-time founders are just too eager to go out there and have their first few conversations.
Thanks for that. So we're going to get close to the Q&A time. I've got one last question for all three of you, but we'll start with Kathleen, and an opportunity for you guys to kind of toot your own horn, I guess. What's the greatest deal that you guys have done over the past 2 quarters that you're really excited about, and tell us a little bit about it.
I mean, that's like asking a parent to choose their favorite child. That's a tough one. But I'll quickly talk about our latest deal that we closed, just our most recent one. It's actually a Canadian deal. We closed a $20 million investment in a company called Alita. Many of you might have known it was formerly called Vision Critical. They just launched a rebrand, so now called Alita. But we're particularly excited about the company. They are a customer experience management platform, so allowing companies to connect with their customers to improve business outcomes. And we're really excited about the space because we believe customer experience will become the new battleground where companies compete for customers. I think we're in an age where there are new devices, new channels, new applications. It's become fiercely competitive to acquire customers. I think similarly, technology has created an environment where customers have come to expect immediacy, convenience, and customization. I think the Uber and Amazon models in all aspects of their consumption of goods and services. And so we're particularly excited about Alita because we think it allows companies today during the pandemic, but also over the long term to really connect with customers and drive meaningful insights for retention, new product development, and things like that. And the management team is great. It's a new management team that was put in place at the end of last year. We've been super impressed with them and the broader company. You can tell you're really top-notch team that has kind of customer experience in their DNA. So we're excited to partner with them. It's our newest investment, so at the beginning of the journey, but it's a space and team that we're very excited about.
Great, thanks for sharing. Meredith, maybe over to you next.
Sure, congrats, Kathleen. I followed that company for so long. Good local company, and she's right. It's hard. It's like, how do you pick one? I don't know. I think probably the most fun deal for me during the pandemic came early for us. Actually, we closed it in May. It was a $7.5 million Series A for a Seattle-based company with an amazing female founder. It's in the legal tech space. It's a pay equity platform. And talk about being in the right place at the right time. This is a company that just has exploded the past few months. Their customers are like through the roof. They're just signing deals left, right, and center, which is so exciting for us. And it was one of those cases where there was a previous investor who had come into a few early rounds. They knew there was another round coming up. They were not ready to lead that round. So they kept a very, very tight process with the CEO. They looked up who would be our top funds who have a history of leading that we should go to. And they just kept like a very tight process. We ended up co-leading with Emerson Collective, which is, for any of you who are familiar, like a really interesting group out of Silicon Valley. So Steve Jobs' widow, Lorraine Jobs Powell, she's a really interesting woman, and she has an incredible fund, and they are very specialized around sort of equity and diversity as well. So they were an incredible partner for us. we put that deal together in 2 weeks, and the company's just been going gangbusters ever since. So we're super excited. They're called Syndio.
Very cool. I'll have to look them up. Alex, last but not least.
Yeah. Again, picking kids is hard. So maybe I'm going to cheat and go with 2. And I'll give not the ones I'm most excited about. I'm going to go with the portfolio company I'm most proud of right now, just because of the work. So a company called Crescendo that has been building diversity inclusivity software. I've been invested for over a year. And they started even before the current Black Lives Matters crisis. They were getting their pipeline in order. They were really early. They were having difficulties last year. They got their operations, they got their positioning right, and they've been seeing a new enterprise customer close every 2 to 3 weeks. And their biggest issue right now is they have too many customers waiting and not a big enough team. So they have to build a customer success team now and stuff like that. So right place, right time, but a lot of hard work, a lot of tenacity, a lot of listening to their customers. And they're like literally every large tech company is inbounding to them and wanting to sign up for them. And they've now got banks and retailers. So just really proud of them and just really happy to see it work out. Because, again, you invest, it's more about the money. It's more than the money. It's about supporting a team and seeing how fast this team learned and how they've adjusted to the market. It's been incredible. Then the one that would be the highest performing, and it's invested in the company in April that I've been tracking for a year and a half. Since then, they've raised 2 follow-on rounds, one led by Bessemer and one by Charles River Venture. And supposedly they're up 16 times in the last 4 months. So I can't mention that one because none of these deals have been announced. But if you were to say that's earning the star, that gets a report card I can brag about, that would be that company just from a valuation perspective. So those are the 2 companies.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. So we're going to move on to questions from the participants in the room. I've got a list them here, and most of them, from what it looks like, are sort of broad for any of the 3 of you to answer. So feel free to step in and answer. And if anyone's got sort of tag along that they want to add on to the answers, please feel free to do so. So the first question that I've got, are any of your firms investing in COVID-based business models, or I guess COVID-based businesses?
What does that mean? Does it mean like someone looking for the vaccine?
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at here, or maybe anything that's helping facilitate, a new world that is navigating the challenges of COVID.
We don't invest in anything biotech. We're not really big in like healthcare or anything. So I would say it's outside of our scope of investment. So we haven't invested in anything that's like specific to COVID, or they might have an application maybe that, but it hasn't really come up for us yet.
Yeah, I would say similarly, if it's on the healthcare side, it's on the technology side as opposed to biosciences, but maybe a derivation of that question is we made 3 new investments really in the digital experience space monitoring. So, a lot of activity to the cloud. How do you manage that, monitor it with all of your employees remote? How do you manage your networks, things like that? So we have invested in businesses that, trends were already happening, and we're seeing obviously a move to the cloud. Certain trends have been accelerated with COVID. And so we have invested in spaces where we had, a long-term view, but have seen, really pick up in kind of short-term traction. So largely on the managing, monitoring, and cloud space. So
I'll take this as 3 parts. Again, bio, trying to find a vaccine, not my bucket. Wouldn't invest in it no matter what, just don't have expertise. Then I'd say stuff that are accelerated trends. I'd say there's some spaces that I was investing before, work from home, or I'll even say with Black Lives Matter, I was always interested in D&I. Continue to invest in that. And there's some areas that have just exploded with interest. So let's say Zoom competitors. So you have Hop in it, and I must see like every 2 days another video experience platform. I'd actually say my reaction to that is super cautious. Valuations are high, capital's being thrown at it. And to me, when you get all the expertise in the room chasing the similar ideas, all the capital thrown at it, it's no longer about having unique insights and execution. It's also about luck. So if anything, I've shied away from some super hot areas that seem to be way overfunded due to COVID and expectations that the deviations from norm are going to continue at such a high accelerated pace.
Great. yeah, the next question we've got here. So imagine a scenario where a founder, a company, and a VC can't agree on the right valuation. What advice do you have for this company on keeping the conversation going and maybe revisiting the conversation in 6 months' time?
That's an interesting one. I mean, certainly we don't always agree. Like, and we also, there was a deal that we really liked recently, and this is not the first time this has happened, where they had a term sheet with a better valuation elsewhere, and it was from the Valley, and they went for that, and we didn't see that that was a match for where we saw where the valuation should be, and we didn't get in on that deal. And maybe we would stay in touch potentially for a future deal. Generally, we're doing like seeds and Series A only, and then follow-ons from there. We don't typically come into a B or C round. So I mean, sometimes it does happen too that for any number of reasons, you don't come to an agreement. But it sounds like in this case, this is maybe someone asking more like if they had a goal and they weren't getting that same feedback that was the right amount from other investors.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next question then. This one's directly for Alex. You mentioned that there's fewer deals raising, I guess, a bigger chunk of the pie. Why do you think that is?
I think it's two things that were mentioned before. There's a capital that has to be deployed. So venture capitalists have a certain finite amount of time to deploy capital. And there's a lot of capital out there. And I think and that's been countered by, this is a more risky and uncertain environment. So when an idea has a team that looks good or an insight that looks good or some traction looks good, there's more people pursuing that. And especially I think from the Valley, I see them willing to pay higher valuations. So what happens is, like, I gave an example that there was a company I was looking at, they were originally going out for 2 and 8 and they got bid up to 5 on 20 just because there was enough interest and enough demand. The founders weren't taking any more dilution and gave them more runway. So I think what's happening is there is more risk aversion, but there's more capital there's capital still has to be deployed. So you're seeing people bid up stuff. And I think that's actually bad for the founders and bad for the venture capitalists in the long run, because raising a higher valuation just means you have a higher hurdle to get your next round.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's a good point, and I would say almost a common misperception among founders raising capital that the highest valuation today is always the best. I think you have to be strategic and play the long game, because if you're going to go out and raise capital again, or you want to position yourself for a sale, you don't want to price yourself out of different opportunities by, I say being short-term greedy, and really thinking about your long-term strategy and how, what can you do to drive incremental enterprise value in the future to continue to increase your valuation? Else you'll kind of be stuck in a down round or have priced yourself out of a potential acquisition. So I think it's a good point by Alex, and I think it's one that most folks don't think about in terms of not always maximizing for the highest valuation, especially early on.
And we're moving on to our very last question here. So maybe we'll have Meredith take it first, and then if Kathleen or Alex wants to join in, please feel free. The last question is there an opportunity for a founder to approach VCs in helping them put together, or they're calling raise, their team instead of just raising capital? So going to a VC looking to add experienced people in certain fields rather than just coming to a VC for capital.
I'm sorry. I think I don't totally understand the question. Is there in the chat? Maybe if I read it, it'll make more sense to you. Or if anyone else, if that was super clear to Kathleen or Alex, please feel free to run with that. I have no.
All right, everyone.
I can clarify because it was my question. Maybe it will help. Is it okay? Yeah. So yeah, if we're looking to add a team member, so we're not looking for capital, but rather somebody with expertise in a particular section, is that still appropriate to access VCs and ask for their contacts and whatnot?
I see. So for example, an executive, you're looking for a CTO or a VP sales. Am I understanding correctly? You're saying, would that be something appropriate to go to a VC and say, do you happen to know someone in your network that would, yeah, is that right? Versus say an advisor, or a board member, are you thinking more like someone who's operationally in the business?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. So look, we do that all the time for our portfolio companies. Like this is very standard practice for us at Voyager. We have such a, we've been in the business 20 years across all of our partners. So we have a lot of founders that have come in and out of different businesses or that are in our network. And we're really happy to help connect them to great new businesses. Typically that's something we're doing more hands-on for companies that are actually already in our portfolio. But that's not to say if we had built a relationship with you or with your company, and perhaps we were even tracking you closely with an idea to invest and we've built that relationship, I would say it wouldn't be unusual to reach out, particularly for a more executive position, right? Like if it's a junior to intermediate role, we really wouldn't be the people you would want to lean on for that. There's probably better people to help with that. But for institutional VC, if you were looking for like a co-founder, a C-suite, certainly like board of director member, we're always happy to help where we can. Yeah.
Alex or Kathleen, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that?
I think the one caveat I put there is I think it's quite common, but if you're asking me for like a CTO co-founder, I would get kind of worried. I think there's I think there has to be, because you have to have a team that I believe if you're bringing someone as a co-founder, there's ways to make it, to de-risk it, but also I'm sort of investing in a team dynamics, and unless you're a superstar by yourself, and I believe you could do everything else, there's going to be something missing, right? Because I also expect, if, let's say you're the CEO, I expect you have some sales ability, and hopefully you can recruit the initial team that's mission oriented as well. And so it depends on what stage you're looking to bring someone in and what role. But again, if you're you need a source of CFO or someone to lead your finance, that's, and you have a team ready and you have some traction, that's something I've done before.
Yeah, and then maybe just to close up, I'll go up another 10,000 feet and just encourage, founders to really think strategically about what type of partner they want. There are definitely investors that are just money. There are, increasingly, as capital becomes a commodity, investors that are providing, additional resources, have in-house operating partners, different value add services that, can be quite helpful for you as you grow your company. So, when you are thinking about raising capital, I think it's important to identify, what type of partner you want, someone hands-on, someone hands-off, and really understand, the different attributes that different firms can bring to the table as you think about growing your company. We talked specifically about hiring just now, but there's a lot of other ways that I have found that firms can really be helpful and provide resources along your journey.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen, and thank you also, Alex and Meredith. It was a great panel, great to get your guys' insight and learn a little bit more about your stories. And I think I'll probably kick it back to Shahab here to close it out. So yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Very, thank you to the panelists, and thank you, Nick, for being the MC for this event. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Before we move on to the virtual networking portion of this event, I just want to remind everybody, for VEF to create a better experience, we're going to be mailing out a survey. So it'd be great for those of you to take a few minutes and give us your feedback so we can always improve on these events. And also stay tuned for our next event, October 20th, which is actually going to be covering something quite relevant, which is the future of the workplace. So with that said, I'll jump off to kind of the virtual networking here. And again, for those who can't attend the virtual networking, be sure to keep in mind for October 20th. In addition, the VEF AGM is going to be on November 10th. So your feedback and how we can be more involved in the community would be greatly appreciated. I guess right now we'll kind of break you guys into different breakout rooms to network, and we look forward to seeing you on October the 10th or 20th.